Hello, fellow traders and Volin subs. So, going to try something new here. We obviously provide our weekly plans in a written format, but I'm going to take an opportunity to kind of consolidate what we type up and kind of give you a walkthrough of what exactly it is that we do here and how I kind of prep for the weekly plan. So first and foremost, I'll review last week. Just how did my plan do? Was I off on it? What was I off on it? I'll try to back test certain things. I will confirm if certain strategies are still working or if I need to tweak them. And so I'll provide a recap in written form, but essentially we called last week for what it was, which was, the key area to hold last week was essentially right in here in ES. So again, I will give that recap. We kind of said here that, last week we had this low volume node right here. We had kind of consolidation between the point of control and the value area high. And we thought that that would be kind of the first area of support between these two. And that's exactly what we got. If you notice here, we didn't even test last week. This is from 8/12's point of control. We just barely got to it, didn't even get to it, and didn't even breach it. So that's why it is still active. And then you can see we just made our push up to that 5650 area, as we said. And then we got a sell-off here, right back down to what was it? Our key level of support we kind of called out, and then kind of rally city from there. So what is in store for this week? Let's review that. So obviously the first thing that I'll do is, as I told, in my plans, I chart both ES and SPX. Obviously there's no real volume on SPX here. This is, TradingView has consolidated this to bring some data into the SPX. So I'm really looking at the ES, especially from a volume profile and things of that nature. And so what I'll do here is it's the weekly levels. I'm a weekly to intraday kind of trader. So my weekly plans, I am looking at what those key weekly levels are. And then as I do my daily trade plans, they will either reinforce what my weekly outlook is, or there might be, a pullback or something intraday that if I am in a weekly position swinging, let's say, I might want to take some hedges, short-term puts, because on the daily for that day, we might see a drawback. Or it might say, hey, you know what? We're pushing up. We kind of got near to our weekly target. The data is now saying, hey, we might have a little bit of a retracement. So take some profits and then, reassess from there. So that is how I kind of use my weekly and my daily plans. I know a lot of you had reached out or asked me questions how I use the two of them together. So let's jump in there. So the first thing, and I've already done these, so I'm just going to kind of flip them on. So the first thing I kind of come and look here is on this most recent weekly action. So I'm on the 4 hour chart here, and I have a volume profile that is looking at that entire week's action. So what we can kind of see here is we push up and we make essentially on the week a P, as in Paul, capital P profile, right? So as we make this kind of push up here, we now know that we've created essentially a low volume node in this area here. And that's when it came back and tested it. We held it and we pushed up from it from that point. So on this week here, if you're strictly just looking, and again, I'll turn these on. If we now look at those labeled, right, we've created our value area high here at 5650. We've created our point of control where the most action occurred throughout the week at 5625. And our value area low was 5612. So essentially, this is the curvature of the P here. If you are a bull, you want to defend this zone early in the week. And if you defend this zone here, then you're going to expect that price should then push up and go up, right? That is at least what we expect, right? So it could do something like this, like this, like this, and then you'd want it to go like that. So if you're a bull, this is kind of what your expectation is. Now, if you're a bear, you would want to see price maybe float up, hit this previous low volume node from the sell that we're in, and that's where we rejected last week. And then you'd want it to kind of rip through and start falling apart through these levels. Won't exactly happen like that, obviously, but that's essentially your goal as you're going through those levels. So that's kind of a weekly outlook there. And let me just remove my drawings. All right, great. So you have your weekly profile there. Now, if I go to the SPX, do the same thing. We turn on our volume profiles there. Okay, great. So we do see we have a gap here at 54.63. In case price wants to come down, that is a important level to see. But once again, it's created a P on that profile as well. You can see there. Now, what I'll do is just for reference here, I will bring in the weekly profile of SPX, and if you notice, they pretty much align with what the ES levels are. So given, maybe the value area low here was off a few points, the point of control is exactly the same, and even the value area high. So we'll just turn that off, but that's just for reference. Okay, great. So the next thing I want to look at is obviously the weekly close as well. So if we pull that up, all right, I think I need to still update that, but let's go here on ES. And if we then turn on the weekly close. So here is the low on the week. Here is the close and the high. So you can obviously see here, if we break this 56.65 and hold above it, we are most likely going to keep pushing up and up and up and up. So that's an important level to keep in mind, and obviously where we closed as well. So that's that. Uh, Now, above and beyond that, we also want to look at like the options expected move, what the money makers are expecting the option uh, move will be on the week. And if we take a look at that, essentially for the week, we are at 81.98 points. So from an SPX level, that puts us at 57.16, and 55.52 is the expected kind of range for the week. So again, I will come over here and I will put those same levels. The difference in price right now between ES and SPX, you are looking at about 18 points. All right, so on ES, that gives us a high of 57.34 there and 55.70 to the downside. So again, those are our volume profiles, some key low volume nodes that we see on both of them, and then our weekly closes and our options expected move. Now next, last but not least, the most important to my trading is essentially vol data. So for those of you who are curious, here is my workspace. So the first thing I kind of look at in this section here are kind of my 0-day paradigms, and I'm looking at that as, SPX, QQQ, SPY, IWM. I kind of have my daily intraday Vanna over here. I have my 0DT charm as well. But then what you'll see here is I'll come in and I'll start to look at different time time levels, time frames, excuse me, for Vanna. So I have all expirations, I have the entire week. I then look at the next 2 weeks in case there's anything interesting of note there. And then I can kind of play around with additional dates as I feel. I'll then look at the 0DTE cumulative exposure as well on the Vanna, and then I'll obviously look at that from an aggregate or all expirations view as well, positive, negative, how much exposure do we have? And obviously most important is the Vanna trend here. As you can kind of see, as we are going up. We want to see that Vanna trend increase. But as you've noticed a couple times over the last week, we start to see this kind of go down. So this is at a point of interest for me. I know this is something that the Wiz will be talking about in our future collaboration video together. So I'll leave that for another time. So essentially what I'm looking for here, if you kind of notice on a weekly level, one of our top levels on the week is 56.65 in terms of resistance, right? And if you look at to the downside, you're looking at 55.75 as potential support. Now, some of these green, larger Vannas, while they are magnets indeed, and if price starts to float, they'll go this way and use it as a magnet. I then use these as pivots, meaning if and when we hit 56.65, and let's say we overshoot, we even get up to 56.75 or 56.80, if we want more continuation to even potentially, 56.95 or even, what is this one, 57.15, these greens essentially are your pivots then, right? So price has to get through them. Maybe it has to sell back down a little bit. It has to consolidate within this 10-point zone here, 5-point zone. But essentially, we then want to see these flip to red then. So again, it's green, you flip it to red, and we want to see some sort of support, right? And obviously, it's being larger than any of the support levels below spot will then more than likely make it that, hey, for that week, then we've now, let's say, seen our low. If you historically looked at this weekly Vanna even last week when we flipped 5600, if you remember that level, when we flipped it, it was a big green Vanna. Then we flipped it as price went up early in the week. When we flipped that and we made it red, it wasn't the largest red Vanna. We still had below spot here, 55.80, I think, 55.90 if I remember right, somewhere in between there. They were two large green Vannas, right? And so they were much larger than what the red Vanna was here at 5600. So that's why we did, I took profits early in the week when we kind of hit above, around 5620 or whatever it was, is because I had a chance that, hey, even if we might push up a little bit more, there's a good chance we're going to come back and sell back down. And that's exactly what we got here. So if you notice, we pushed up. We hit about 56.30. I think it was somewhere around here where I said I'm going to take the majority of my profit. And then while we did push up, another 15 points-ish, we then sold immediately. And we hit back to the key level on the weekly, which was a large green Vanna. So what this is essentially telling you right now is for the week, 55.65, and then potentially we could sell back down. Obviously, we have to look at the data. If we have a gap down, this will be an area of interest. If we have a gap up, this is where I'm interested to see if we're gonna, maybe face some resistance and then sell back down. So this is what I'm looking for. I'm flat on positions right now. I'm not carrying any positions into the week. I'm going to wait. I'm going to be more patient. I'm going to let the overnight action, even potentially the morning action, guide me. But let's see what happens, right? On the smaller side of the support level, obviously 56.20, 25 here. These will be important. So if we do gap down, let's say we sell an overnight action, if those hold, then those could potentially now become new areas of support to push us back up there. So minor support, major support here on the weekly so far based on what this looks. And then we have a lot of resistance above here. All right. So when you start to lay that out, you put it on the SPX here, we put it on our Vanna levels. All right, that's what it starts to look at. Let me kind of zoom in here for you. So now you can kind of see the areas of cluster and interest, right? And now let me go do that and flip that on for the ES. So let's kind of look at the ES chart here. So you can kind of see essentially this zone right here is kind of our first zone of support, right? We had some of that positive and negative Vanna. Then our second area of support. So if we lose 56.38, there's no support in this zone until we get either to the point of control again, or we find that the positive VANA here supports us. So again, that's like an opportunity to maybe take a short, as a quick scalp kind of trade if we see that happen. So that's one. Now, obviously, this is that big cluster of VANA that we saw from the Volin charts there. That's represented here on the SPX, as you can see, over here as well. Now, what you can see is if we hold, 56.38 or 56.20 here, let me try to get these as close as possible. There we go. So you can kind of see if we hold this 56.20 area here, which is 56.38 here, that's giving us a huge opportunity then to go long, right? So if we go long and we hold this, if we find support here, then price is going to want to navigate and now push up, right? Or it could just consolidate forever and then push down. But essentially, you could enter here, now this is your stop loss, you push up and sell any rips. So as we make through these levels, these closes, naturally that first target above this cluster here, 56.50, 56.38, we should get to 56.83 then. So that's how you can essentially use VANA, the volume profile, to navigate and trade. So if we hold either this zone here or this zone here, I expect then price to navigate up into this zone then. And then if we consolidate and find pricing here, that naturally then brings us then to 57.18. And then if, which is minor resistance, and we break that, and then the all-time highs here, we now looking at this next zone here of interest. And so, for the SPX levels, so 56.20, 25 holes, that pushes us up to 56.65. That's that big red VANA on the weekly. I want to see what happens. Do we hold? Do we kind of sell and retreat back? Where's the next entries at 56.50 here? We'll have to see what the data shows, and where do we push back up to then maybe target 5,700 and so forth. So again, 56.20 breaks, more than likely we're heading back to 56.07 to 5,600, kind of this zone here, even 55.95. And then do we push back up? So that's your potential scenarios here. Lay it out on your charts, patiently wait, trade what the price gives you, manage your risk, and then off you go. Hopefully this was helpful beyond just giving you the writing of our plan, our letters on the weekly basis. I hope this video helps you out as well. Good luck in your trading, and we will see you next week. Thank you.